All right, good afternoon, good evening, I guess, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Bryan Pearlman. I'm glad that everyone is here. We had almost 500 people register for this today. We are so very glad that you're here with us. In just a second, I'm going to make myself disappear so I can actually see the whole screen. Don't worry, I will be here with you the whole time. You'll hear my voice. And again, so glad that you could join us. And we're going to get this thing started right now. So today you're here. This is Maslow Before Bloom, Basic Human Needs Before Academics. The book was released on May 2nd. That was actually this past Saturday. About a year's worth of work went into that book. It's my second book. I'm so glad. I've had so many people send me emails and tweet to me and message and all of that great stuff. Very excited. I'll be very excited when I get my author copy in the mail as well. I currently have the PDF, which is great. I wrote it, just don't have my own book. Somebody asked me for an interview if I would pose with the book. That didn't work out so well because I don't have a copy yet. At the bottom there, you'll see that tiny URL that takes you directly to the Amazon site, exactly on the page where the book is available. This sounds like some shameless self-promotion and a big commercial. I'm really sorry about that. And also that little dealio in the bottom right corner, if you put your phone up there, you can get directly there as well. Enough with the commercial, we got to jump into this. We will go about an hour, give or take, and we'll see how it goes. So before we get into this, or before we get too far into this, I think we need to be celebrating stuff. My wife and I and our family are always looking for silver lining. You know, we're in this coronavirus, COVID-19, new normal, crazy time of our lives. I didn't say of the year, not of a year of our lives. It's been over 100 years since something like this in the past. So we all need something to celebrate right now. Did a little bit of homework, of course, very aware of Teacher Appreciation Week. So thank you to all the teachers out there. Anybody that works with kids, I believe, is a teacher. So thank you to all of you, and we really appreciate everything that you've done, particularly everything you've done in quickly adapting to how fast things change, going from in-person to online and all of this craziness. So from everything that I've heard from everyone that I work with, while it was crazy, everyone handled it like a champ and is really doing the best that they can for their students, the families, and the community. So major kudos. Same applies to School Nurse Appreciation Day, which also happens to be today. And doing a little further digging, and maybe not as applicable, today is also International No Diet Day. I've never heard of that. They got a big old cheeseburger, an ice cream, a soda. I don't even know what's in the background. It looks like a donut or a record. I don't think anyone's gonna eat that. But a happy International No Diet Day. And I feel so bad for this bottom right one. It's actually Tourist Appreciation Day. So maybe we need to move that to another day, another year, another time. All of us, I'm sure, are looking forward to traveling at some point in the future. So on that note, let's keep moving. If you have any questions during the webinar, there is a Q&A and also a chat feature. You can use those. I will field those questions as I have time, and certainly I will save time at the end to fire off those. I've actually gotten some text and some tweet questions to me already. You can also text. My number's up there right now. During this, you can certainly share information that you learned, something that is new information, something that reinforces what you already believe, or just something pretty cool. If you want to do that, please use the hashtag Maslow Before Bloom. So we got that out of the way. And as those of you who know me really well know that I spend a lot of time on Twitter. It's an amazing place. I'll have a plug for Twitter in just a minute, so maybe we should move on. Just a little bit of information about me, just to kind of let you know. I am always a teacher first. Anybody that I talk to, I've worn lots of different hats, had many different jobs right now, have many different jobs. But if anyone asks me, I'm always a teacher first. I'm a recovering school principal and actually did a year in central office. So I'm recovering from that too. I'm a licensed mental health therapist here in Missouri. I do keynote addresses all over the country. I do professional development all over the country. I don't know why I put author there. It's my book to start this thing. That's kind of weird. I'm an adjunct professor. In fact, I submitted my semester grades 2 days ago for this semester for Maryville University. I teach Ed Psych of the exceptional child or student. I rewrote the course and I don't even know the full name. Between all of our initiatives at the bottom left is most valuable professional development. That's my professional development for-profit. The middle, Dr. Lena Pearlman and Associates, otherwise known as STL for St. Louis. STLmentalhealth.com is the practice that we work at. Bottom right is a nonprofit that my wife and I and about a dozen of our friends started. We work very closely for a year with a handful of schools every year, working on all the types of things that we're talking about now. Usually around January, we take submissions or applications from school all over the country, and we usually get 300 or 400 of them. So there we go with that. I said I would give you a commercial about Twitter. For those not involved, I'm DRP_principal, short for Dr. P_principal. I follow back. We're using that Maslow Before Bloom. If you are not on Twitter, please get on Twitter. Some of the best minds in education, mental health, trauma, all of the above are there. People share all kinds of great information. Join a professional learning network, otherwise known as a PLN. You should totally do it. If you're not there, you need to do it. Do it right now. Like really, I'm stopping. Do it right now. Sign up, follow me. I'll follow you back when we're done. And well, I hope you do it right now. We started a Facebook group, Maslow Before Bloom. We started that in September. The link is down below. You can see it there. We have somewhere in the 3,000 range already. And again, they're educators, they're doctors and psychiatrists and therapists, and I don't know who I'm leaving out, teachers and principals and superintendents. All of those fine folks are a part of that. So definitely check that out. So what does Maslow Before Bloom mean to you? And often when I post the pyramid or the other pyramid, people say, well, wait, they're not lined up exactly right. Or did you mean to? I didn't mean to do anything. I just put up Maslow's stuff and I put up Bloom's stuff just as a point of reference. You can certainly look there. You can send me a message if you'd like, and I'll share it as we go through. Just really thinking about what does Maslow Before Bloom mean to you? And for most of us who went through education school or went through counseling or went through a social work program, we're all very familiar with Maslow. Not as many people, I think, outside of the education world are as familiar with Bloom. Maybe that's the case, maybe it isn't. But there's a little bit of information here. Look, the book I wrote is not a biography of these two fine gentlemen. There is information, just some baseline. Here's what Maslow believed. Here's what Bloom believed. Here's the importance of why we say Maslow before Bloom, and so forth. So it's certainly not. If you want to learn more about either of these guys, you can get both of their biographies. You can get both of the books that they've written, lots of books that they've written, and you can also go and do a Google search. All of those are perfectly appropriate. Lots of good information there. So the goals for this webinar today, as I said, I'm going to try very hard to stick to an hour, and it's kind of talking about the background and purpose of writing this book, information about the concept Maslow Before Bloom. We touched on that a little bit. I'm going to share a case study. It's actually a chapter from the book. I'm going to share a really good one, and there's lots. I believe there's 15 of them in there, and I know that there's a lot that you can relate to. The names that I experienced with the kids I worked with may be different than the names, but the stories are very similar. I'm going to talk a little bit about what a Maslow Before Bloom friendly or styled teacher is, and why I made it a point to look for those kinds of folks when I was hiring, and whether it's a teacher or another staff. And maybe I should have said a Maslow Before Bloom staff person, because I always look for people that had these types of attributes. We'll talk about some staff needs too, just in general staff needs that we have, but also staff needs considering what's going on right now in the world, okay? We're gonna go over an overview of a problem-solving process that I cover in the book that I wrote. It's a 10-minute problem solving, and we'll kind of touch on that a bit. We will talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on all of this stuff, trauma, behaviors, mental health, self-care, all of that, and how that's been impacted by this terrible disease, this terrible virus that we have. I'll answer any questions, and we'll call it a night after that. So hopefully that works for you. I hope it works for you, because I don't have a plan B. That's what we're doing. So why did I name this book Maslow Before Bloom? So a very good friend of mine stressed the importance. I was talking about, the second book I'm coming out, and he's like, no. You got to come up with a similar title for a sequel. You like Star Wars and Rocky and Caddyshack. It works for them. It should work for you. So why not come out with whatever it takes to, like TOO, or whatever it takes to, like the number, or more, whatever it takes. And that was cool and all, but that's not really what my focus was. I had been training so much and traveling so much and talking about Maslow Before Bloom and stressing that we've got to get to these basic human needs first, then we're going to get to the academics, and kids are going to be, and teens are going to be amazing, and they're going to reach and achieve, exceed their potential. So I ditched my friend's idea. Actually, the book cover, my daughter, Samantha, who's graduating, actually graduated, her undergraduate, actually, like, she's supposed to graduate this week, going on for a Master of Social Work in the fall. Also is very talented, very creative, very artistic. She actually designed the book cover. We then had it, kind of formatted in that. But if you love the book cover, you can credit her. I hope everyone loves the book cover. I think it's pretty awesome. So what's happened between writing book one? Book one, Whatever It Takes, was written in January 2019. So almost 18 months later, give or take, maybe it's a few shorter months than that. But what's happened, and I really feel like I've been like that Johnny Cash song, I've been everywhere, because I feel like I really have. And it's an amazing thing. It's awesome. I'm so excited. It's been such a blessing to be able to travel. I've actually been in front of over 40,000 people since that first book came out. And the really important thing on that is that the kinds of challenges and concerns and opportunities I've seen in Missouri, my home state, I've seen in Massachusetts, Mississippi, Maine, Montana, everywhere. I could go on and on, all the states that I've traveled, okay? I also see that the number of students, or percentage of students, that are struggling with the effects of trauma and poverty and stress and mental health challenges, they're all similar regardless of the geography, okay? These are issues that cause students to struggle with academics, behaviors, etc. Okay, it doesn't really matter. All these places are unique and amazing and awesome, but we're seeing the same patterns in all of these different communities wherever I go. So educators everywhere are totally looking for adding more tools to their toolbox to learn more about trauma, to understand the impact of mental health, and find the best ways to serve their students. The bad news, and I hate to tell you the bad news, there's not a magic button or a magic pill out there for this. Okay, there just isn't. It doesn't exist. However, there are a wide variety of strategies and interventions and resources that can improve all of these areas, okay? I do see some questions. I'm getting them over text and through the messaging. I want to jump into some of this, and I promise I'll answer all of these. So what's my personal connection? I didn't rewrite Whatever It Takes and call it Maslow Before Bloom. There's no carryover or similar. I mean, there's similarity, but there's no text the same in the book. So just reiterating, in case you didn't read that first book, okay? My hope was that I could affect positive change and ensure that other students didn't suffer through what I did. I hated school, and I spent most of my time in the hallway, principal's office, nurse's office, counselor's office, or at home. And there's so many reasons for that. A big combination is ADHD. I didn't even think they had that name. They never diagnosed me, but clearly that's what I had. Being twice exceptional. So being gifted in math and also dealing with learning disabilities, this whole combination made school either way too easy, way too hard, and I just couldn't sit still. We literally sat all day long. Okay, it was just miserable. I hated it. Okay, so that's my story. That's why I believe so much and so strongly in Maslow Before Bloom. A couple other things. If a student is hungry, exhausted, scared, traumatized, disconnected, lonely, or feeling like a failure, it'll be very difficult for them to achieve to their highest capability. We have the ability in our schools and community to help work on these items and to change life trajectories. It often takes commitment, creativity, connections, and kindness, but the reward and payoff is so amazing. Hey, folks, if a student is hungry, tired, or scared, give them food, a nap, or a hug. Okay, well, in this COVID world, we'll do a virtual hug. This does not require board approval or a bond issue. It seems so simple to me because it is simple. It's also very effective. Maslow before Bloom, please remember that. I'm not really into this whole tattoo thing personally, but like I think I need to get a tattoo that says Maslow before Bloom on one arm and on the other arm, whatever it takes. I have to think about that a little bit. Fortunately, I'm not going to rush into it because in St. Louis County and most of Missouri, tattoo parlors are not open. But this is very important. Most successful educators that I encounter epitomize the concept of Maslow before Bloom. They understand that schoolwork and achievement are both important. They also know that the human side of things are more important. If the human side of things are addressed, true learning can occur at a high level. So I want to share with you, it's only a few pages. I think I timed it maybe 7 minutes. I want to read you a case study, fresh off the press, right in the book. It says case study 5. It's actually chapter 5. And it's maybe he cheated on the gifted assessment. This is MJ's story. I don't even think he belongs in this program. Maybe he cheated on the gifted assessment. How can he be gifted and struggle at reading like he does? Also, I thought gifted students behaved well and wanted to be at school. That was a quote. I actually thought that I was having a nightmare and a flashback. These were almost the identical words that I overheard a teacher say about me when I was coming in to use the bathroom during recess as a 3rd grader. This wasn't a nightmare or a flashback. This was a teacher in my building. She was speaking about MJ, a 5th grade student. I could feel my pulse through my neck, my temples, and in my chest. I knew that this would be the wrong time to discuss things with this teacher. I knew that I would say things I might later regret, as I was quickly moving out of my window of tolerance. I hadn't felt this way in a long time. I was quickly becoming agitated and upset. I asked the teacher if we could finish this conversation later in the day. She looked at me with a puzzled look, shrugged her shoulders, and left my office. This was a good thing for both of us. I was halfway to becoming the Incredible Hulk and still halfway David Banner. I'm sorry, I'll just stop for a second. I'm a big time superheroes nerd, so bear with me. For the next 5 minutes, I practiced my cooling down exercises and techniques that my wife Lena had taught me. It's a great thing that she is a therapist. I took deep breaths, I visualized my happy place, and I went for a walk in the building. Strangely, during my walk, I encountered MJ. It must have only taken 5 minutes for the teacher to put him out in the hallway. MJ was sitting with his face in his hands. He looked completely deflated. I asked MJ what was going on. He let me know that he didn't get his math book out fast enough and rolled his eyes at the teacher when she yelled at him. I asked MJ to hang tight for a minute. I entered the classroom. Before I could get a word out, the teacher said, "See what I have to deal with? He is a disaster and he's completely disrespectful." I asked her what had happened. She pretty much recounted what MJ had said. The teacher asked if I could take him to my office since she didn't think she could deal with him for the remainder of the day. This worked out perfectly since my plan was to take him to the office. There was no possible way this was going to improve the situation. MJ walked with me to the office. I asked MJ what was going on. I expected a more detailed explanation about the situation. I was wrong. MJ said she hates me and she has hated me since the beginning of the school year. I can see the way she looks at me and how she treats me compared to the other students. As I was listening, I thought that he was spot on. I was pretty sure this teacher had not liked him since day one. He had a great year last year, and this year had not gone very well. I was thinking of a response, but before I could speak, MJ said, "I also think she thinks I'm dumb or something." I asked him what made him think that. She never calls on me, and she always gives me only the easy work to do. I, of course, would never say anything, but I thought he was 100% accurate. We spent the remainder of the day working on some challenging math problems. He was really good at this work, and we were successful in finishing the day on a high note. Right before MJ left, we discussed what had happened in his part in getting sent in the hall. I explained that it would be best if he followed the directions and tried hard not to roll his eyes, as this can be construed as being disrespectful. He agreed to try harder and said that he would apologize to his teacher tomorrow. We shook on it. Then he left my office to go to his bus. After school, MJ's teacher came to my office to finish our earlier conversation. I let her share her concerns, her thoughts about MJ's day, and the rest of her venting. When she finished, I shared what MJ had said about her low expectations, how she hates him, etc. I was extremely surprised when the teacher owned these and agreed to all of them. This added fuel to my fire. I was trying very hard to not get agitated or angry. I had written down her comments verbatim from the earlier conversation. Quote, I don't even think he belongs in this program. Maybe he cheated on the gifted assessment. How can he be gifted and struggle at reading like he does? Also, I thought gifted students behaved well and wanted to be at school. I handed the piece of paper to her and asked that she read it. She read the words, and when she was done, she looked up at me. It was my turn. I let her know that this was almost exactly what I overheard a teacher say to me when I was in elementary school. That was the first of many situations that helped cement my belief that school was awful and this school thing wasn't for me. It took so many years for me to rebound from this and realize I was smart and wanted to be a teacher that was the complete opposite of this one. The teacher's face turned very pale and she put her face into her hands. She looked just like MJ did in the hallway. I gave the teacher two choices, the first of which was the opportunity for me to move him into another class for the remainder of the school year. The other option was a plan to help turn the situation around, which would include relationship building and setting high expectations or higher expectations for MJ. She asked if she could think about it and get back to me tomorrow. I agreed and she left. I am a probability person, perhaps because of my love for math. In my head, I bet there was an 80% probability that I would be moving MJ to another class. This was based on the fact that it was highly likely we'd cross the point of no return in this relationship, and the fact that this teacher had previously displayed a fixed mindset with little flexibility. I spent the night reviewing class lists and teachers to figure out a better match for MJ. The next day, I turned my lights on, started my computer, and was beginning to go through emails. It was about 6:40 in the morning, and I thought I was the only person in the building at this time. I heard a knock at the door. It was MJ's teacher. She looked tired and sad. I offered her to come in and have a seat. She closed the door and sat across from me. She said, I did not sleep at all last night. My immediate reaction was to let you move MJ to another room. I don't know what it is about him, but he has been under my skin all year. I have not had that reaction to a student in years. I decided that this is my fault and I need to fix it. Please let me have another chance to repair things. MJ deserves better than what he's been getting from me. So much for my probability theory, I thought. My crystal ball must be broken. I agreed and let her know that I was here to support her. I really did not know what to expect. I've always been of the belief that real change takes time. I also think it is difficult to undo a first impression. Most of these beliefs were proven inaccurate very quickly. MJ's teacher made an almost immediate 180-degree turn. I saw her work so hard to help MJ reach and exceed his potential. Beyond the academics, it was like a new teacher had come into her classroom. She built a strong bond with MJ. I even caught them giving each other a high five after he answered a challenging problem in class. MJ was sitting in an office chair when I returned from the meeting. I wasn't sure why he was in the main office, but I asked him if he would like to come to my office. He agreed. At first glance, he looked sad and down. Wow. I thought that I completely misread the situation. Maybe things weren't going as well as I observed. As my mind was filled with ideas for a backup plan, MJ's whole face changed. He shouted out, I got you good, Dr. P. He had a wide smile and his eyes were glowing. MJ let me know that things were going great and that he loves his teacher. His whole purpose in visiting the office was to thank me for helping him and for bragging on how great the current situation was. MJ said, I don't know what happened, but it is amazing in my class now. I'm so excited to come to school. Thank you, Dr. P. He got up and ran around my desk to give me a hug. When MJ left, I handwrote a note to his teacher. I had enough evidence to know that her actions had already made a profound difference in the life of her student. After school that day, MJ's teacher stopped by and asked if I had a minute. She sat down and shared how this whole experience had taught her so much and in the process made her a better teacher. When we were done talking, we got up and I walked her to the door. At the door, she turned around, gave me a hug, and thanked me for trusting her to fix this problem. Later that year, there were so many positives. MJ's teacher nominated him for the Math Bowl. She told me on several occasions how smart he was. This was a huge success for all involved. I thought about my own experience in elementary school and wondered how things would have been different for me if my teacher had been like MJ's teacher. The next year, I moved on to another school, but I kept tabs on both MJ and his teacher. MJ continued his successes in school and won the district character award one year. His teacher wasn't too far behind him. She won District Teacher of the Year a few years later. I saw the video from her acceptance speech. The interesting thing was that she gave credit for her successes to her learning experience working with a boy named MJ. How amazing was that? So here's some questions to ponder. I'm going to review some of the things that have been sent my way, but here's some questions. You totally can respond to these by the Q&A, by the chat, and we can just talk about this. Or you could just think about it. What would have been different if you had been in my shoes? Or what would you have done? I'm sorry, what would you have done if you had been in my shoes? What did MJ and his teacher need? How many teachers would have accepted the offer to send MJ to another teacher? And at the end of every chapter, I say what Maslow items were a part of this chapter. So feel free to send stuff this way. I'd be happy to respond to that. Let's see what we have here. Let's see. Okay. There's a comment on here. Thank you for sending this, talking about how even now some people don't understand or appreciate what twice exceptional or 2E, like the number 2 and E. I travel all over the country, and I can tell you at least half the people have never even heard of that. And I can tell you when I was going to school, there certainly was a belief that you couldn't be gifted and learning disabled, or gifted and have some other concern at the same time, which is baloney. We all know that. Some have said, I don't know if I would have trusted his teacher to turn it around. You know what? I didn't know either. I honestly didn't. I mean, certainly I wasn't just going to let it go. If things hadn't gotten better, we would have made a move. We would have done what we had to do for our students. Someone commented that they get students who get sent to them, and that's awesome, right? And then another one, this is a great one. Thank you, Joan. This reflects the maxim that kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that is totally true. Let me see if we have any. I can't see this question. Let's see, help the teachers see. And you're right, Kelly, thank you for sending this. Relating that prior experience as a student definitely helped me be able to deal with this situation and to know what MJ was feeling. It's crazy. It's crazy that it literally was like deja vu, like almost like they had taken the comments that I heard as a third grader. I mean, that's back in the 70s, I think, the late 70s, maybe early 80s. My math isn't working right now. And it literally was like someone fast forwarded that and said, say this to a kid in school. It was exactly what it was that I hadn't dealt with. Let's see. And here, yeah, thank you for this question. If she hadn't wanted to turn things around, would you still have moved him? What if there wasn't another teacher to meet his needs? That's a great question. In my situation, there were. I've been so blessed and so fortunate to work in schools where there are people that epitomize Maslow Before Bloom or whatever it takes, right? And I would have tried whatever it would have taken to make this work. I've worked in buildings where, even sometimes before I can address it, a teacher comes, and that was another story I was actually going to share, someone who volunteered, it's in the book, to take on a kid that they knew others weren't going to want, others weren't going to take. In fact, there's a teacher that I worked with, and I really don't want to use real names or say who it is, who every year when it was about the time to start doing the class placements, had already done her homework in the grade before, and literally was like, give me them all. Give me all the kids that fit this profile. And she was absolutely amazing at helping to turn them around. It was like a magnet for taking the kids that nobody else wanted or didn't want to deal with, okay? And, honestly, I'm not going to bash any teacher, okay? I can tell you from whatever it takes, you'll see in my book, if you haven't read that one yet, that I'm sure I wasn't easy to deal with. I'm sure I was a pain in the rear end, okay? But there are teachers out there who not only are okay with taking them, seek out these kinds of students for them. And there are others. And thank you to Amy, who's said, I'm totally the one who likes working with the tough cases. I don't want to get into too much storytelling. I had my bubble burst or the air let out of my sail. I went and met with my former principal when I was a teacher, and she had given this student who literally had come out of like the highest phase building the year prior because he had like body slammed his teacher through a window, and she put him in my class, and I felt so amazing. It was like a second or third year teacher. I'm just this great teacher, and I had some swagger and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, she just trusts me, and I'm the relationship king, and I'm this great teacher. And like when I stopped being a teacher and a principal a few years ago, I had a meeting with her. I was picking her brain about something, and maybe I needed some strokes or some positives. So I kind of brought this kid up, and I said, you know, why was it that you gave this kid to me? And I needed the build up, and I'm waiting for it. I'm so excited to hear all these positive attributes. And she's like, oh, I could tell you exactly why I put him in your class, Pearlman. You're the only one in the building bigger than him. I was like, oh, there goes that one. So whatever. But I did sign up for kids like this. They're the kids that I was like and I loved. And so here's some questions. You could certainly use this. When I do trainings, whatever the topic is, there's trauma, challenging behaviors, mental health, self-care, whatever. I love using the real world scenarios, the real world stories. I'll talk in a little bit again about the 10-minute problem solving process I came up with, because even though you weren't in my shoes at that time, it's highly likely that you were dealing with a student or students who fit a similar profile. So we're going to move on. So what is a Maslow Before Bloom friendly staff person? So to me, and this is not an exhaustive list, it's just some things I put together while writing the book. And for one is high empathy and compassion. I will take that over anything. I can teach the nuts and bolts of teaching to anyone. I really don't know how to teach that empathy. I mean, I do. I usually do by using stories and problem solving, and hopefully in a training, make people cry a little, make them laugh, and then, you know, kind of build that empathy a little. Someone who's flexible, someone who's passionate about helping students to reach their potential, a team player, growth mindset, grit, determination, resilience, being a resilient person, an excellent communicator, someone who's inquisitive, a problem solver, kind and caring, a relationship builder, a collaborator, creative, and a talent developer. You get me that person, they will be a darn good teacher anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, for sure they will be. So Maslow Before Bloom also applies to staff. Self-care, and more self-care. What does self-care look like? And what are some examples? I've done full-on half-day trainings on nothing but self-care. And we'll work through it, and we'll come up with a plan, and everybody will leave with tools, and they'll have a self-care buddy or someone who holds them, an accountability buddy in that. And I'm going to give a huge plug to my wife's journal called Stay Here. You can find that on Amazon as well. I was never a journaling person. I could not see the benefit of it. It was just something I never believed in. She came out with this, I believe she came out with this 3 or 4 months ago. And I use that thing. I use that thing religiously. I use it morning, I use it evening. It is amazing. I put my thoughts down, I reflect, I put it in my nightstand, and I sleep like a baby. So daily journaling, whether you use Stay Here by Dr. Lena Pearlman on Amazon right now, or another kind of journal, or you just jot notes into your phone, any of those are appropriate. Also, healthy eating. We say that for the kids, we say it for us too. Okay, there are foods that help us to be better, superfoods. There are foods that cause inflammation, and that's inflammation of everything, including the brain, which causes more stress. So healthy eating, adequate sleep, walking. I've walked, the silver lining of COVID is I've walked with my kids, my wife, more times in the last 6 weeks than I probably have in the last 20 years. Okay, brain breaks, relaxation apps, listening to music, drawing, painting or creating, mindfulness, or a 44-ounce diet soda, fountain variety with ice pellets. Okay, well, the last one, maybe not the best option, but I am totally a sucker for fountain sodas, and I am totally in withdrawal because I have not been to Quick Trip, which is our spot here in St. Louis. I've been on the East Coast. I go to Wawa when I'm there, and a whole bunch of other places, On the Run, whatever else. I'm giving commercials to all these places, and I have not had one in 6 weeks. So help me, send me something. All right, all joking aside. So in the book, I actually have my 10-minute problem solving, 2-page document that you use. And basically, I'm not going to read all of this to you. It's a 2-sided document. When I do a training, I either come in an afternoon, do a little presentation, introduce the document, have everybody in the room fill out the first page. Then we do some problem solving as a group if there's time. And then the next day, as we do some examples, so we teach it, the next day I usually spend the entire day in a building and I work grade by grade by grade. And we set the timer and people talk about the first page. We work as a team in 10 minutes or less and come up with all kinds of information and strategies that can be literally used the next day. I came up with this because IEPs are important, 504s are important, care teams, RTI teams, all of these things are so important, but all of these things take so much time. And they are important, and we're going to continue doing those. But for a lot of people dealing with a student who's struggling right now with the effects of trauma or the effects of behaviors or mental health or academics, we need something that we can do right now so that student can be better tomorrow, and we can start getting them progressing step by step, and we're getting evidence and data towards whatever that next thing is that happened. I remember as a first-year administrator, it would take months. It would take months, half a year, maybe a year, to even come up with a plan. And then when we miss a deadline, and then it's the beginning of the next year, and we've wasted a year of a kid's life. That is not cool. That is not okay. We cannot afford to do that, period. Exclamation point. We cannot do that. So in essence, having this type of plan, I'm teaching people how to fish instead of just giving them a fish. In some of these, yes, I problem solve. I come up with strategies and interventions. People reach out all the time, and I answer, and I give them ideas and things to do. That's great. But what's way more effective is when I teach them the process, we work together as a team. That day, we can get through 25 or 30 kids in the building, right? That's your key tier. Those are the kids we really need to work on right now. Then we set it up. Everyone knows how to do it, and we keep that process going throughout the rest of the year. Okay, I've gone to districts. I was just in Arkansas. It was my last trip before quarantining, and I worked with representatives from all the buildings to train the trainer in this. Okay, it's not that this is incredibly elaborate or complicated. It isn't. It is just a concise process that if we stick to this, that we can come up with a plan and implement it short amount of time. It's not a binder. It's not read 100 or 200 or 300 page book. It's just a process. And if you see my 2-page process, I say in the book, and there are things you like or dislike, change it. I don't really care. Change it so that you can use it. Okay, I've been to so many trainings. I've signed off on so many trainings for my staff, and they go through these elaborate trainings. It's a big binder, and 6 months later, nobody remembers it or does anything. This is a big money expense, big waste of time, and nothing's changed as a result of it. That's why I came up with this process. Before the whole quarantine, a lot of my trainings were the 10-minute problem solving. Okay, I do them as webinars periodically throughout the year. I offer them as train the trainer. Again, it's not that it's incredibly complicated, because I mentioned it isn't. Okay, it's just a process that we are committed to, and the schools that take this and run with it send me notes all the time that because we sat a number of different people, a varied group of people together, and we committed to do this, and even if we got to just a few kids, in a week, we can make a big change. We can put things, we can tweak it, we can keep trying, then we can move to the next group of kids. So that's included in the book. You'll see it. It's like I'm giving it away. I don't care. I hope that this is a benefit to people. I know that my path would have been different as a student had they used this process. As a teacher, it would have been more effective. As a principal, I would have been more effective. Didn't have it then, and that's okay. So I've got some random final thoughts, some other thoughts. I'm going to answer some questions. I've gotten a lot that have come in to me, and I want to tackle those and still honor the fact that I said that we would end. You see, I started on time, I end on time. It's a good thing in your buildings. If you're not doing that, make sure to do that. It's being respectful of those who are with you. Okay, we're moving on. So some random thoughts. Lead with empathy. Assume goodwill until proven otherwise. Take care of yourself. You won't be any good to anyone if you aren't good to yourself. Self-care does not make you selfish. Educators are the worst at this. They really think self-care makes them selfish. were gladiators or warriors and superheroes. Great, you can be all of those. I love all of those, but I'm going to have to tell you something. You may not want to hear it. You're also human beings, okay? In our buildings, we have to model this for our colleagues. If we're in a supervision role or in an administration role, we have to model this. We can't pay it lip service. We have to own this. We have to teach this, okay? We tend to go after the same teachers over and over again. They're helpful, they're great. We load on more and more and more, and then they're useless. And I don't mean that in any mean way. They're not in a good shape for themselves. They're not in a good shape for their students. They're not in a good shape for their families at home if they have it. You have to make time for self-care. I am a huge proponent of having a mental health day or days during the year, okay? If your heart wasn't right, you wouldn't go to school. You'd get care for that. If you had diabetes and something wasn't right, you'd stay home and take care of that. If you caught a cold, you'd stay home and take care of that. I wasn't good with the whole science and anatomy stuff. That was not my strength in school. But I remember the big three were like heart, lungs, and brain, right? Self-care, mental health related things are part of one of the big three, maybe the number one thing. If something isn't working there, if you're overwhelmed, if you're stressed, if your anxiety is really high, if you're depressed, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first. You're the most important thing. Okay, I used to say forever, decisions based on kids, and I still mean that. But we have to make decisions based on our staff, who in turn can work and help our kids to achieve amazing things. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. Hey, folks, there are no bad kids. Help the grown-ups so they can help the kids. I just said that. Realize that most people are doing the best that they know how to at any given point in time. That means us. That means families. That means kids. We give kids what they need when they need it, period. When a student is using unkind words or acting out, it isn't about you. Always look for ways to improve your craft. Remember that the majority of us have faced trauma and or mental health concerns. Hey, folks, we're living through it right now. Most of us have, first of all, before all this COVID and Corona thing, 2/3 of us have a ACE score of something, at least one. 100% are going to have this going back to school in the fall. Chew on that for a little bit. Think about that. We don't have a second to waste. If you work with kids, you have the most important job in the world. Stress the importance of Maslow Before Bloom, and thank you for everything you do for kids. I have a few more slides here. Some more final thoughts. This book was largely written 90% or so before any of us had ever even heard of a COVID-19 or whatever the hell that thing is. A large number of students, staff, and families were dealing with trauma, mental health concerns, and other related issues before COVID-19. It is likely that everyone will be coming back with some trauma due to COVID-19, increased stress, isolation, recovering from illness, loss of a friend or loved one, okay? We can help frame the conversation. Trying to fast forward or ignore this experience would not likely produce good outcomes. Prepare now. In your districts, whatever role you are, have those conversations. What is it going to look like when we return to school in the fall, if we return to school in the fall, or when we do? What is that going to look like? What are the needs of our kids, our staff members? What are the needs of our families? What can we be doing now? I know we, as a practice and also in my training, are preparing, and we'll do something probably in July where we really break this stuff down and help put plans together for schools about what's needed. We're going to need a plan. We're going to need community resources. We're going to need to allow opportunities to vent. Look at the school social worker, the school counselor. They are amazing. In good times, there aren't nearly enough of them. They are human too. They are living with this. A lot of them have become de facto teachers for their own children. Okay, they're isolated, they're stressed. There is this fear of the unknown. Okay, start making a plan now. Start having these conversations. Okay, I am an eternal optimist. I know this too shall pass. I know we're going to be back to school. I know our normal might not be the normal that we used to have, and maybe that's okay too. But we need to be thinking about these things right now. I heard through a colleague, and I don't remember where in the world, this colleague is. It might be somewhere in Canada, I can't remember, that they're going back to school for the last 3 or 4 weeks of school, like now, and what it looks like. And I'm bald, so I'm not pulling my hair out. I would be pulling my hair out and just trying to understand why we're doing that. And if someone said, well, it's because it's the only way kids can eat, and it's because families have to go back to work because of this and that, it's because we put in all these measures that we can possibly do, and we have to do it. Okay, I'm not in those shoes right now. I'm not making those decisions. I would be questioning, or not questioning, let's say I would be asking a lot of tough questions about how for sure we can keep kids and staff and their families and grandma and grandpa at home safe when we return. I questioned that a lot, but I saw that, and I actually felt like my empathy, I think, was off the charts of thinking about, I don't know that I would want to be in the shoes of that administrator, that teacher this soon, right? In St. Louis right now, in Missouri, we haven't really hit our peak yet. We're close to it. But the last 4 days, I think yesterday I read the last 4 days were the most infections that we saw, maybe the most deaths. I don't want to quote that to be specific. So again, I'm kind of following the science and following the math and really thinking about why we're opening stuff today. And again, I'm not in other people's shoes. I don't want to have an intellectual conversation. I know that people need to work, and I know that things need to happen. But like, my thing is, as someone with high empathy, who's worked with thousands of kids in my life and adults, I couldn't even bear to think that any more of them would get sick, or God forbid, even pass away than have already, right? So, all right, I'm going to get off the soapbox. I'm doing it again. So I've got some other things, but I just want to show I do trainings. Here's the website. We do these. We can do them by webinar. We can do them in person, and so on and so forth. Very short commercial. I'm moving on. Did I mention Twitter? If you haven't signed up yet, let's do it. The Facebook group we talked about, make sure to sign up for that. I will approve you as soon as I get off of this if you put a note in there. My book feels like a commercial again. We are doing a Maslow Before Bloom. There's missing quotes in there. If you can see them, maybe you'll get a prize. First annual Maslow Before Bloom National Conference. It's a year from this July, assuming that we get rid of this COVID thing and it's safe to travel and safe to congregate. That's our plan. If for some reason something changes, we will let everybody know. We've extended, I have to change this on the website. We've extended the submission deadline. It was going to be May 1st. We've extended it to June 1st. So we are definitely looking at speakers. We have already talked to about a dozen people for sort of the keynote piece. That domain name takes you to my website, but to the page where you can apply, it's maslowbeforebloom.com. Let's look at some of these questions that have come up. Let me see first if I can find them. Here we go. All right, let's see. The Maslow Conference, the same as MVPD, Most Valuable Professional Development, is my website. The Maslow Conference is listed there. It is July of 2021, thank goodness. I would be in big trouble now if I was trying to do it this summer. It is not. The form is included in the book. Someone asked. Let's see, having just as high. Yes, high empathy is really important, and you also have to have boundaries. Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that. So those were some of the things on chat. Let's look at some of the questions. If any more, fire them away. Let's see. So somebody's saying about anxiety issue, whenever I have to ask any question from my teacher, or the teacher have to ask any question from me, I get this fear I'm not able to speak, or sometimes even a stammer also, and that makes me hate my classes. Okay, so that is a great question. This is actually from a student, so thank you for sharing that. Great question. That might be a really good one for you to fire me an email. I will be happy to answer that. There are a lot of things that we do from a therapeutic standpoint in dealing with anxiety, and some of it is practicing in a benign way, some is exposure, and so forth. Some of it is that what is the root cause of that anxiety? What is the root cause of kind of having that fear? And a lot of times it's when we're not present right now. Like my wife says all the time, we need to be right here, right now, in the what is, not in the what was, thinking in the past, or the what if, which is thinking in the future. So the more we stay present, the more we don't fortune tell, oh my goodness, this is going to act weird, this isn't going to work, I'm going to get so upset, and so forth. Okay, let's see. Someone's asking about Head Start. I'm a director of Head Start. Do you ever present to them? Yes, I totally do. Are you currently working as a principal? I am too young to retire, but I did retire a few years ago. What I spend my time doing is I spend about half my time traveling and training, about, I don't know the math on this, a quarter of my time, maybe a little more, doing therapy, and a quarter of my time as a professor and author. Those percentages are probably wrong. I was a principal for a long time. I was a teacher for a long time, but I am not doing that. Let's see, about anxiety. I already got this one. We process what happened in the classroom enough. Right. Christina, great question. I don't think we process situations that happen in the classroom enough. 100%. That is something that I profess all the time. When I do trainings, I talk about what we should do before entering a situation or dealing with a situation, what we need to do, before, during, and after. And part of it is that debriefing, the de-escalating, the thinking through this, the processing, the taking care of our own needs, okay? Because as we said, we are human. Let's see, some reflection. Okay, good. I think I caught most of those. Does it matter which book I read first? No, it doesn't really matter. The first book has some more information about me and me going through school, and has about 15 or so case studies, and then talks about my shockers approach, school-wide team, hope, out-of-the-box thinking, critical friend, kindness, empathy, response to intervention, and self-care due to stress and secondary trauma. It's in there. You're welcome to read that. But this Maslow Before Bloom still got that new car smell on it. So you totally could check that one out. Either one would be just fine. There's no problem with that. Somebody talking about dealing with 2 to 5 year olds. Okay, let's see, but how should this look like in the future? Yeah, great question. We tie in the COVID. I don't know the part about the 2 to 5 year olds and the best plan for that. Certainly, as we've learned for the COVID part of that, making sure people are wearing masks. I'm sure it's not easy to get a 2, 3, or 4, maybe even a 5-year-old to keep a mask on. Making sure that we're doing the, washing our hands, we're keeping a safe distance. I know it's going to be really, really hard for the littles, no doubt about it. 2 buildings I worked in, I also oversaw the preschool, and so I totally get what that looks like. So as far as the COVID part, that's really hard. Having the conversation with them. I know if there aren't books written or articles written or even little short stories about having that conversation with the littles, if they aren't out yet, which I believe I've seen some, you can guarantee there will be things out in the near term. I would take a look out for that. Reach out to me in a few weeks, because if I don't have it now, I will find something for you. I want to see if there's any other chat, any other questions. Keep firing away. Well, let's see what I have. I have just a couple more, and we have 7 minutes left. So what do you do if your building is very traditional with discipline, punitive, suspension focused, etc.? That is a great, great question. It's really hard. It's really hard to change mindsets. I'm certainly very willing to come, work with your school, district, organization, conference, etc. And what I think usually works with people who are really traditional focused with punitive stuff and suspensions is to look at the data, right? I was the king of suspensions way back early in my career. And it was a definition of insanity, because I kept doing the same thing and it didn't change anything. So I'm all about effectiveness and positive outcomes. If you're in a teaching capacity, sharing articles, sharing resources, sharing books, my books, any book, on my most valuable professional development, mostvaluablepd.com on the website. If you look through there, you'll see that there's a whole list of books. Some I recommend, some that others have recommended, but there are really good resources you can share with people that have lots of data, that have lots of strategies. Success creates more success. If someone's effective and doing things, fantastic, that's awesome. So that's what I would recommend. Some in my building say that restorative is just code word or being soft on discipline. That's BS. That's not true. Then they don't have a full understanding of restorative process, okay? In my mind, it's a way of holding people accountable, having people repair the damage that they've done, learning from it, and so forth. Most of the schools I've worked with that have had a restorative piece in what they do have reduced discipline issues, have gotten rid of the repeat offenders in so many cases. So I don't believe that. How to change culture, another question, how to change culture towards trauma informed. Hey folks, this isn't just a binder. This isn't just a small subset of your population. Before COVID, it was like 2/3 of us. Now it's going to be 100%. I don't think we can ignore that anymore. And I still traveled around. Not even, I mean, my last thing was in March. Prior to that, I'd go to places that they had done nothing yet for trauma. I don't think they can avoid that anymore. I think they'd be highly ineffective if they try to avoid this. Let's see, how to support staff and students for reentry. I think we covered that a little bit. How to support students who are moving up to another school. So like elementary going to middle, middle going to high, high going to college. You know, I think a lot of it's going to be conversation between the levels, having conversations, making sure from the academic piece that we're having conversations about where we left things off, and then ensuring that we are also adding in, maybe we would have had that transition day that we haven't had, but maybe spending the first week or two of school focusing on nothing other than the Maslow Before Bloom things, the repairing anything and helping folks with what they need and helping them with the transition to the new building and getting acclimated way before we get into the academics, folks. If we put that work in, it's going to make everything else that much better. Let's see. And there was another question just saying they think that there's probably a lot more trauma. I agree with that. Someone shared here, Dr. Becky Bailey's Conscious Discipline website has a lot of good resources on how to explain the virus to preschoolers. So Dr. Becky Bailey, Conscious Discipline website. I will have to check that out. Another question about when the book will be available in Australia. I don't know the answer. It should be available. I know it's available in the US. It should be available all over the world. If it isn't, shoot me an email, text, tweet, something, and I will find out how to make sure that book becomes available to you in Australia. If Corona wasn't here, I would throw out the invitation. I would love to hand deliver that book because I would love to go to Australia, but that's probably not happening right now. Last question, aside from your book, any other resource to refer back to when trying to stress the need for teachers' care and wellness comes first? I think that you can look on my website, or if you're in that Facebook group, post that question. We will get probably dozens of answers for you on that one. Let's see. How can teachers work with students on behaviors when there's no consistency between home and school? After every break from school or weekend, it's like the behaviors reset and everything we have worked on this is forgotten. I've done a lot. I've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to try and fire this away. What I would say to that question, that is a great question, is that we spend most of our focus on things that are within our control. That's working on kids during the day, teaching them. Eventually, it will break through. I also am a huge proponent of having parent education, like parent university, sending articles home, reaching out to people, sharing these resources, trying to do this in the most welcoming and most benign way, because for a lot of our parents, they are doing the best that they know how to. I have to assume goodwill to proven otherwise. And for a lot of them, they don't know any better. For a lot of them, they didn't come to school when legally they had to come to school. So a lot of it just has to do with educating. A lot of it has to do with looking for ways that's not threatening. Again, I was just in Gravette, Arkansas. It was my last training I went to. And the night before, I said, I'm just going to be sitting in a hotel room. Maybe we could do a community meeting. So we did a community meeting in a church that covered mostly mental health, but we could do a parent meeting and cover topics about, you know, consistency, about, you know, positive mental health, about trauma, about behaviors. And let me be the bad guy. I'd be more than happy to have those conversations and help do that. And, you know, as trainings I put out there that are for parents and families, promote that. Let people know that they're out there and available, and that I'm happy to do anything I can to help. Hey, folks, we are exactly 1 hour. I love it, love it, love it. Again, check out Twitter. Oh, here, I'm going to put my mug up here again. You can see that I'm still here. Check out Twitter. Check out that Facebook group. Text me, email me. Check out the Maslow Before Bloom stuff. You can certainly go and buy that book if you'd like. You can look at Stay Here, my wife's journal. It is an excellent thing. Firsthand, I'm telling you, I'm using it. Never journaled before, and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Please stay healthy. Please take care of yourself. Please reach out if there's anything I can do to help. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me.